Hey now, allow me to pimp introduce myself. I am the God-anointed game-appointed gentleman. Freeze is it. Letting this game swine dive off of my tongue, moonwalk on your eardrums, and slide off into your brain for that mental game nourishment one time, you dig? Breaking down the difference between this pimping and human trafficking. I know a lot of people that may watch this video probably think that it's one and the same, but Freeze is here to let you know that the reality of it is pimping and human trafficking have nothing to do with each other. It's two totally different things, you dig? Now, give you a little background on it, right? Pimping, as we know it, had a surge in popularity back in the 1960s. It became a real popular culture back then, and it's done nothing really but grow in popularity since then. So, they've always had laws against this. Pimping and pandering laws have existed for decades, you dig? Now, human trafficking laws, only a few years old, they're fairly new. So if human trafficking and pimping were one and the same, why is it that the human trafficking laws haven't existed nearly as long, a fraction as long as the pimping and pandering laws? I'm going to break down why. Okay, so like I say, pimping and pandering, or pimping, it becomes popular in the 60s, Now, this is why pimping is so popular today. Back in the 80s, you had the crack cocaine era. And what that did for the brothers in the ghetto, in the black community, was give them an opportunity to make large sums of money that they never imagined being able to make before. You dig? When crack hit the hood, it provided a way for the young brothers there to get their mama out the hood, get themselves out the hood, help their family, afford cars, jewelry, houses, clothes that they never were able to afford before, right? So, a lot of these brothers was making millions of dollars a day. So when that became the reality of the hood, the lobbyists, the lawmakers, government, what have you, they say, okay, these guys are making too much money in the hood, So what we're gonna do is the same thing. It's the same drug, but it's just modified. Powder cocaine and crack cocaine. Okay, the sentence for powder cocaine, is 100 times less than crack cocaine. So hypothetically speaking, right, you got a gram of powder cocaine. Let's say that gram of powder cocaine gets you a year in prison. The gram of crack cocaine, same amount but just modified, is going to get you 100 years in prison. You dig? So with that, they were able to put a major dent in the black community. You dig? A lot of brothers that was serving crack back in the days, they either spend the rest of their life in jail, or they spend so many decades in jail that when they get out of prison, it's pretty much, they feeling hopeless and they ain't got nothing to live for, things like that. So it really fucked the community up, you dig? So, like I said, these laws came into effect probably like the mid-80s, and the eventual effect of those laws was that now you got a lot of brothers that's either locked up dead or fucked off in the head. So the few that have some sanity that made it through the crack era, crack ain't popping like it was. It's not as lucrative as it was. Meanwhile, you got the pimping over here shining, looking good. The pimp is still able to move his mama out the hood and afford all these luxuries that the dope man used to be able to afford. So here you have it in 2016, going into 2017, the average motherfucker who would have been selling dope is now trying to sell pussy. He trying to be a pimp, you dig? So now that it's no more war on drugs, the government, I guess they call themselves doing the black community a favor. And they're like, yeah, you know what? Instead of giving people 100 times more time for crack cocaine as powder cocaine, we're going to reduce it to 18. So nowadays, if you have a gram of powder cocaine, hypothetically speaking, if that gets you a year, then the rock cocaine, a gram of that is going to get you 18 years. You dig? So while it's fucked up, I guess they call themselves doing us a favor by making it not so fucked up. You dig? So, like I say, the war on drugs is non-existent pretty much nowadays. So now they got it as the war on human trafficking. You dig? But notice how the common denominator within all of that is the black man from the ghetto. You dig? Who's already got the deck stacked against him from the time he's born into America. You dig? The black man was thriving off of crack cocaine, so now it's the war on drugs. Now that the black man is thriving more so off of pimping, it's the war on human trafficking. You dig? But I gotta break it down for y'all, man, because like I say, human trafficking and pimping, two totally different worlds from each other. They have nothing to do with each other. You dig? Let's break down the legal terminology of it. Okay, pimping. Pimping is basically receiving and living off the earnings of a prostitute. That's the legal breakdown of pimping, right? The legal breakdown of pandering is basically recruiting or trying to persuade someone to be a prostitute. It's a legal terminology for pandering. Okay. Notice how within that terminology, and you can go look it up for yourself, there's nothing about force. You know, there's nothing about kidnapping or anything like that. You dig? There's nothing forceful about the situation. Now, you take the legal terminology for human trafficking. Human trafficking is just totally fucked up. You dig? Human trafficking is basically taking a vulnerable person, threatening them or forcing them to fuck with you, like basically kidnapping them. So you take a vulnerable person, you kidnap them, and then you tell them, bitch, you better get this, you better go fuck these motherfuckers and get this money for me, or you're gonna have to deal with these consequences. You dig? And there's some colorful consequences normally that a female is not trying to fuck with, so, you know, that's her whole reason for getting down with you. You dig? So even the legal terminology, if you look at it, is totally different from pimping and pandering. But if you look at the actuality of it, nowadays all the brothers that they charging with human trafficking are actually pimping. You know, that's the one thing that they might be guilty of is being a pimp. But the human trafficking laws hold much harsher sentences than the pimping and pandering. Like I said, pimping and pandering law has been around for decades, and normally the maximum sentence that you'll receive on a pimping and pandering charge is 8 years, and that's involving a minor. You know, if it involves an adult female, the maximum sentence will normally be like 6 years or something like that. So like I said, this is something that's been going on for decades, but now something that you might be guilty of doing is the same exact thing, but they take different terminology. It's like they put the pimping and pandering charges on steroids and blew it up. Now it's these monstrous ass charges that's gonna come smack you on the head and give you a life sentence. You dig? So it's the same act, but now they call it human trafficking, and they're able to give you the maximum of a life sentence. And like I say, you can go Google all this shit. It's not hard to figure out and find out for yourself and confirm everything that I'm saying. You dig? So, but the cold thing about it, you know, this is what's so fucked up about it. You can have a white man in today's times who's affluent and well off get charged with human trafficking, but he's still not going to receive the same type of sentence that a black man would for those same charges. Like if you let's look at Florida, right? Down in Florida, there's a white billionaire man by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey is spelled regularly. Epstein is spelled Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein, you know, like I said, he's a billionaire. He's a white man. He balling. He having his way down there in Florida. He got some billionaire tycoon friends just like himself. You know, and these dudes, they all got weird type of fetishes. So, you know, Jeffrey comes with the idea of, you know what, I'm going to take these 13, 14-year-old girls and I'm gonna force them to, you know, fuck around with my billionaire buddies, satisfy their kinky desires, and you know, they gonna give me some money for it. But it's not so much about the money, because we all balling out of control. We just want to exploit these vulnerable, innocent children to satisfy our sexual desires. So Jeffrey creates a prostitution ring involving young girls. He gets busted. Now, initially when Jeffrey got busted, it was from the time frame of 1999, I believe it was, to 2008. And he had initially 34 counts. You could pretty much say that it was a habit for him. That's something that he was really into, you dig? He had 34 counts of sex trafficking of a minor. You dig? But money talks and bullshit walks. You know, and due to the fact that he got the right paint job on his skin, that helped him out even more. So Jeffrey ends up getting most of those charges dropped. I think he only had 1 or 2 counts at the end of it. And he ends up getting a 13-month sentence in prison, right? This is how that 13-month sentence was served. Okay, the first 8 months of Jeffrey's sentence, he had a work release program that allowed him to be at work 12 hours a day. Work 12 hours a day. So basically, he only had to spend half of the day in quote-unquote prison, which was probably like a suite at the Taj Mahal for his rich ass. And he also was able to spend half of the day on the streets, quote-unquote, at work. So this is the first 8 months of his sentence. Then the last 5 months of his sentence, he's on house arrest at his fortress, his multi-million-dollar mansion. You dig? Now I say this is in Florida. Jeffrey Epstein, you can look it up yourself. Also in Florida, you have a young man by the name of Gary. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it's spelled Chereles. I want to say that's like Chereles. Excuse me if I get it wrong, but Gary Chereles basically, right? Also a man in Florida, but the difference between Jeffrey and Gary is that Gary is a young black man who's not well off, who's not wealthy. You dig? So Gary gets caught up for human trafficking, same thing like Jeffrey, but Gary's case, he only has 2 counts, and neither of his counts involve a minor. So basically, Gary is charged with human trafficking on 2 adult women. So his two counts of human trafficking, and then he also has 2 counts of tampering with a witness. Now, you can decide for yourself which situation. Like, take away the fact that it's a black man or a white man, rich man or poor man. Just look at the 2 different situations. You have one situation where a dude basically was caught red-handed, human trafficking on 34 minor girls as young as 13 years old. And then you have a man who got caught up for human trafficking on 2 adult women and tampering with 2 witnesses. You can decide for yourself which case looks worse, right? So back to Gary. Like I said, I just broke down his charges for you. Gary ends up getting a 20-year sentence. You dig? So like I said, I just broke everything down for you, and you can go Google all of that information yourself, confirm it with your own eyes, and decide for yourself which situation was worse. You dig? But you see, Gary, like I said, he got the wrong paint job on his skin, and he ain't got the right type of money to speak Trapanese to these people, you dig? So Gary ended up getting a 20-year sentence. And see, what's even more fucked up, how they do the pimping. Like I said, I don't know if Gary was an actual real pimp or if he just was in the wrong place at the wrong time, got caught up in the wrong situation. But there are a lot of guys who really might only be guilty of pimping. But like I said, they take the pimping charges, put them on steroids, and beef them up to these human trafficking charges. And now they hitting a motherfucker with human trafficking. You digging what's so fucked up? If a motherfucker does get out from serving time on a human trafficking sentence, when he gets out, he has to register as a lifetime sex offender. You dig? And I know most of you watching this probably think that a sex offender, when you hear the term sex offender, you automatically think predator. You automatically think pedophile. But it's not always the case. You know, you got a lot of pimps who get out from serving time on a sentence like that, and they got to register as a lifetime sex offender, and they may have never even been accused, let alone actually done anything with a child. You dig? Their case might not have involved a child at all, but it's a part of the humiliation. It's like, okay, you're already a felon. You dig? So it's going to be that much harder for you to get ahead in life, and then you got to register as a sex offender. So you can't be in certain areas at certain times. It's all kind of crazy shit. Motherfuckers going to be looking at you crazy for moving into their neighborhood and all that type of shit. So it's just a fucked up chain of events that a motherfucker has to go through being a pimp. You know, in today's times, if you get caught up, you dig. But just to let you know, give you an idea of what a real pimp is, you know, because it's a lot of misconceptions. One of the biggest misconceptions is that pimps force girls to fuck with them. You know, they threaten them, like, bitch, if you don't fuck with me, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill your mama, I'm gonna kill your family, I'm gonna kill the dog, I'm gonna drown your goldfish, bitch. Just all this crazy shit you couldn't imagine being done to you, I'm gonna do to you, bitch, if you try to leave and not fuck with me, you know. Pimping ain't got nothing to do with that. Pimping ain't forcing a bitch to do nothing. Pimping is fully based on choice. It has nothing to do with force. You dig? Another big misconception about the pimping is that the pimping uses drugs in order to get a female to fuck with him. Like, uses drugs to control them. Like, takes bitches who ain't never had anything to do with drugs, get them hooked on drugs so they can fuck with you. A pimp ain't gonna do that. You know, pimping is about cooperation from a coherent mind. You dig? A clear, untampered, untainted mind. You dig? Pimping, you know, wants to have full cooperation with a bitch, and if she's on drugs, then she's gonna be more cooperative. She's gonna be more inclined to cooperate with that dope man first before the pimping. You know, so a pimp is just basically setting himself up for failure if he hooks a bitch on drugs. You dig? Now, you got motherfuckers who do shit like that and call themselves pimps. Oh, another big misconception before I continue on that. That pimps are predators, that pimps are pedophiles and fuck with young girls. A real pimp ain't got nothing to do with minors. You know, a real pimp has everything to do with integrity. You know, and a real pimp is gonna fuck with a grown woman who's legally of age, and he's not gonna try to put her on drugs or force her to do anything. You dig? Now, like I was about to say just a second ago, you got a lot of motherfuckers that call themselves pimps who are going to force a woman to fuck with them, who are going to put a woman on drugs, and who are going to fuck with underage girls. They may call themselves a pimp, but they're not actual pimps. You dig? Those are things that are shunned upon by real pimps. You know, if it comes out among the pimp community that, hey, this man, you know, he fucking with kids, the pimping is going to turn their back on him. You know, the pimping looks down upon things like that. You dig? It's a taboo type of thing. To fuck with a young girl, an underage girl, and the pimping is like being a homosexual or being a snitch in the street life. You dig? It's just something that's just not accepted. You know, pimping ain't going to endorse that. Pimping is not going to co-sign that. Pimping ain't going to have nothing to do with that. You dig? So like I say, you got people that call themselves pimps that indulge in that type of activity, but they're not actual real pimps. You dig? But like I say, man, I just wanted to break down the differences between human trafficking and pimping. You know, a real pimp, if you ever have the opportunity to meet one and just take time to get to know them and not judge them by the preconceived notions that you have of what a pimp is, and just, you know, take time to get to know him for who he is, you're going to learn that a lot of pimps are very intelligent. A lot of pimps are gentlemen. You dig? A lot of pimps are, you know, charismatic, funny, humorous, considerate, nice, all the shit. You dig? And contrary to popular belief, you know, I know it's a lot of motherfuckers that call themselves pimps that indulge in drug use and things like that. But hey, man, a pimp is the master of himself. And the pimp is only at the mercy of himself. So if you have a motherfucker that's on drugs, that has a drug habit, you know, that person is going to be at the mercy of these drugs. You know, the drug is going to have them mastered. The drug is going to have them beat. You dig? So with that in mind, the pimping ain't going to indulge in that type of activity. The pimping, like I said, is going to be the master of himself. You dig? So, you know, a pimp ain't going to allow some drugs to pimp on him. Pimp ain't going to allow a bitch to pimp on him. None of that type of shit. You dig? Pimping is going to be a straight, clean and sober-minded, clean-cut, well-mannered gentleman. You dig? But that's my breakdown on human trafficking versus pimping. Two totally different worlds from each other. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned. Freeze is it. I'll holla.